A little after dawn on June 11, 2011, an SUV struck and killed a mountain lion as it crossed the Wilbur Cross Parkway in Milford, Connecticut. The driver was unhurt. The animal died at the scene, a 140-pound male in the prime of its life, lying on the shoulder of a highway in a state where, officially, there had not been a wild mountain lion in more than 100 years. The first assumption everyone made was the obvious one. There were no cougars in Connecticut, had not been for a century, so this had to be somebody's exotic pet, escaped or dumped. But when biologists examined the body, the easy answer fell apart. There were no tags, no collar, no signs of declawing or captivity, and a chemical analysis of its tissues showed a wild animal that had been eating wild prey its entire life. So they ran its DNA, and the result rewrote the record books. This cougar had been born in the Black Hills of South Dakota, and it had walked to Connecticut. More than 1,500 miles in a straight line, probably far more than that on the ground, across at least 4 states over roughly 2 years, the single longest journey any land mammal in North America has ever been documented making. And then, 7 years after this animal proved that a wild cougar could cross an entire continent to reach the East Coast, the United States government officially declared the eastern cougar extinct. It would mean less if people had stopped looking for them. They never have. Across the entire eastern United States, from Maine to Georgia to the suburbs of the Midwest, people report seeing mountain lions constantly. The reports number in the thousands year after year, decade after decade. A large, tawny cat slipping across a country road at dusk, something too big for a bobcat watching from a tree line. And running underneath all of it is a contradiction that has never been resolved, because the official position could not be clearer. In 2018, after reviewing more than 100 studies and consulting wildlife agencies across 21 states, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service formally struck the eastern cougar from the endangered species list on the grounds that it had been extinct for the better part of a century. An animal declared gone forever in a region where a real one had just walked across the country and died on a parkway, and where people will not stop seeing them. They have a name for it: the ghost cat. This is the space the whole story lives in. The official record says the eastern cougar is extinct, and has been since before most living people were born. The last one anyone verified was killed in 1938. There is no confirmed breeding population anywhere in the eastern United States outside of Florida. And yet, the sightings pour in, and every so often, like that morning in Milford, a real one turns up dead on a road, hundreds or thousands of miles from where the maps say any cougar should be. The animal is officially gone, occasionally undeniably present, and almost never actually seen. Which leaves the obvious question: what exactly are all these people looking at? To even begin to answer that, you have to untangle what the eastern cougar was, and here the story takes its first strange turn. The animal goes by more names than almost any creature in North America: cougar, mountain lion, puma, panther, catamount, painter. They all refer to a single species, puma concolor, the big tawny cat that once ranged across nearly the entire hemisphere. Back in 1946, taxonomists carved that species into 32 separate subspecies based on the look of their fur and small differences in size, and one of those was the eastern cougar, the population that had lived throughout the forests of the eastern United States and Canada. That was the animal placed on the endangered species list in 1973, and that was the animal declared extinct in 2018. But here is the twist. By the time the government made it official, many scientists no longer believed the eastern cougar had ever been a real distinct thing at all. Genetic research around the year 2000 collapsed those 32 subspecies down to just a handful and concluded that every cougar in North America is essentially one animal. Modern DNA cannot reliably tell an eastern cougar museum specimen apart from a cougar shot in the Rockies. So the government had declared extinct a subspecies that its own best science now suggested may never have existed as anything separate in the first place. But arguing about the label does not change what happened on the ground, because whatever you call them, the cougars of the eastern forests were real, and they were destroyed. As European settlers spread across the east, they killed cougars on sight out of fear for themselves and their livestock, with bounties paid for every dead cat. They cleared the great eastern forests for farmland, and they very nearly wiped out the white-tailed deer, the cougar's main prey, leaving the cats nothing to eat. By 1929, the eastern cougar was considered virtually gone. The last one anyone could verify was killed in Maine in 1938, and there's a photograph from that year of a biologist named Bruce Wright posing with its body, the last confirmed eastern cougar in the United States. After that, for 80 years, nothing. No bodies, no proof, only the silence of an empty forest and the long, slow process of an animal being formally pronounced dead. Except the cougar was not finished with the East, and this is where the ghost cat stops being entirely a ghost. Out west, the story ran in the opposite direction. Cougars there recovered, and then they thrived, and then they began to run out of room. In the Black Hills of South Dakota, the population climbed to around 250 animals and hit what biologists call saturation. Every territory claimed no space left. And when a cougar population fills up, the young males have no choice but to leave. They disperse, striking out alone across enormous distances to find unclaimed land and mates of their own, because the older males will not tolerate them at home. For more than a generation now, those dispersing cats have been pushing eastward, steadily recolonizing the Midwest, turning up in Minnesota and Wisconsin and Michigan. And a few of them, a rare and remarkable few, keep going, all the way to the East Coast. The ghost cat that people across the East keep reporting is, in a strange and literal sense, slowly becoming real again. Not as a surviving remnant of the old eastern cougar, but as western cougars walking back into the East under their own power, reclaiming the ground their kind was erased from a century ago. And the proof of it was lying on that parkway in Connecticut. The cat that died in Milford was nicknamed the St. Croix cougar because it had been detected near the St. Croix River on its way through the Midwest. Its journey was not a guess. Researchers had unknowingly been tracking it for nearly 2 years, picking up its DNA from droppings in hair at sites in Minnesota and 3 locations in Wisconsin, photographing it on citizen trail cameras, even pulling its genetic signature from a bed it had melted into the snow near Lake George, New York, 6 months before it died. Every sample matched. When the cat was finally killed in Connecticut and its DNA compared against a national database, the match to the Black Hills population came back at better than 99%. One animal had proved beyond any argument that a wild cougar could walk from the middle of the country to the Atlantic seaboard. And the unavoidable implication is this: if one cougar made that journey and we happened to catch it, then others have made it, and we did not. Which is exactly why the ghost cat remains a ghost, because a wandering cougar is almost impossible to pin down. The St. Croix cougar was a 1 in 1,000 case, an animal that happened to leave genetic evidence at sites researchers were already watching, happened to be photographed, and then happened to die somewhere its body could be recovered and tested. Every other cougar making that long walk east leaves almost nothing behind. It moves at night. It avoids people by deep instinct. It crosses through farm country and forest and suburb in the dark and is gone by morning, leaving at most a handful of unconfirmed sightings that get written off as a large bobcat, a house cat, or somebody's escaped pet, which is precisely what officials assumed about the Connecticut cougar right up until the autopsy. The scientists who documented that animal said it plainly in their published paper: there's a near-total lack of physical evidence behind the thousands of cougar sightings reported across the eastern United States. But that absence of proof is not the same as proof of absence. It is a measure of how completely invisible a single traveling cougar can be. So the skeptic's question, is the ghost cat real or not, does not have one answer. It has 3, and all of them are true at the same time. First, is there a hidden breeding population of cougars living in the eastern woods? No. There is no credible evidence of cougars breeding and surviving anywhere in the east outside of Florida, and the overwhelming majority of reported sightings really are misidentified bobcats, dogs, deer, and house cats seen at a bad angle. Second, do real wild cougars actually reach the east? Yes, without question. The Connecticut cougar is DNA proof, and confirmed dispersers turn up in the Midwest on a regular basis. Third, the old skeptic's complaint that people see what they want to see is partly fair because the sighting reports almost never come with a body, a clear photograph, or a sample anyone can test. A hidden population, a handful of real wanderers, and a flood of honest mistakes, all layered on top of each other. That is why the argument never ends. Honesty requires saying the hardest parts out loud. The eastern cougar, the named subspecies that was placed on the endangered list, is genuinely gone, last verified in 1938, and its very existence as a separate animal is doubtful. In more than a century, the thousands of sightings reported across the East have produced almost no bodies, no clear photographs, and no DNA. There is no secret population of the old cats haunting the Appalachians. And the conspiracy theory that some people cling to, that the government declared the cougar extinct specifically to avoid having to protect eastern land, gets the science exactly backwards. The delisting was a bureaucratic correction for a subspecies that probably never existed, not a cover-up. Believing the original ghost cat still prowls the eastern forests requires a faith the evidence simply does not support, because the real story is stranger and more precise than the legend. The science does not say the eastern cougar survived. It says that the animal officially declared extinct in 2018 was likely never a distinct creature to begin with. But the cougar itself, the species, is walking back into the east on its own, one disperser at a time out of overflowing populations in the west, crossing whole states and on rare occasions an entire continent to reclaim a range it was wiped out of 100 years ago. The ghost cat that people keep reporting is mostly a mistake, occasionally an escaped pet, and every so often the genuine article. A wild mountain lion hundreds of miles east of where it is supposed to be, passing through in the dark while everyone sleeps. So it ends where it began, on the shoulder of the Wilbur Cross Parkway in the early light of a June morning. The cougar that died there had traveled farther than any land animal North America has ever recorded, across the whole width of the country, only to be killed on a highway in a state that officially had no cougars, 7 years before the government would declare its kind extinct. He was alone, and he never found what he had walked all that way to find. Somewhere out west tonight, another young cougar is leaving the place it was born, with no mate to find and nowhere left to go but east, into the country that erased its ancestors and forgot they were ever there. Almost none of them will ever be seen, but one of them, someday, will walk far enough to remind everyone that the ghost cat was never quite a ghost.